afternoon, Tasha. How are you on this fine day of our Lord?
Well, it is a fine day indeed, and I survived, and hopefully you also survived the stormy weather we've had over the past
And
couple of
wait a minute.
days.
I know that was something else, but I was isn't there some rapture date or something that was supposed
Oh,
to?
yes, it's the 22nd. It's still coming up.
Okay, no, because I read somewhere that it was the 16th. So I was just gonna go
Oh,
like,
that would be today.
no, that was yesterday.
Oh, so you mean so have we been raptured or have we not been raptured?
Nah,
But
I
I live in Worcester, and on days like today, Worcester is like heaven. So maybe I have been raptured and I've been taken to heaven because it's a stunning day, So yes, but we've had some severe weather. We had I have a little school now, in no irony intended, but I actually run a little school out of one of the local churches, and yes, and the
the
wind was
Lord
so
helps those who helps themselves.
the wind was so severe that at least 12 roof tiles were blown off. So there's damage. And then, of course, people in Gordons Bay and up along the south coast, there's been some severe damage. I mean, I saw cars floating into the ocean. And so, yes, Mossel Bay, still by Gordons Bay. So our sympathy,
the Cape of Storms living up
Cape
to
of
its
Storms,
name.
sympathy to anybody and everybody who sustained damage because of the severe weather we've had in the past couple of days. And perhaps that's a good segue into our topic for today. Are you going to introduce it for us?
I will gladly. So today we are going to be talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, the cities that. Sorry, I just want to mute my phone here. The cities that drew the ire of the Almighty Creator of the universe. Where we don't actually know whether it was because of. There's a couple of different theories, but. I think the prevailing one is because this is where the origin of the word sodomy comes from, I believe, in a certain sense.
Yes,
that there was
not in a certain sense. That is exactly where the origin of the word sodomy comes from.
Yeah. So it is because it was believed that, was it the angel of God and God together?
Well,
or
that's an interesting story in itself. But I just want to say, why do you think they just said sodomy and not Sodom and Gomorrah?
I don't know. It was probably Sodom and Gonorrhea.
Can you imagine? You've been sentenced to prison for Sodom and Gomorrah.
And then also the what is called the sin of Onan, which was basically like a primitive form of contraception, I guess.
Exactly.
Maybe it was the beginning of the pull-out method. I'm not exactly sure.
So those people knew more than we think. They knew. It's the M word, masturbation.
Oh my goodness, Christians have got a very big problem with masturbation, eh?
Yes, and I
and everybody does it, but
no, not only Christians, religions, not only Christians, religions, especially the Abrahamic religions, have a problem with sex and sexuality. My dad is 74, and we had an interesting talk. when you have teenagers and when you have a mom like me, my son asked me something. He's 16, and he asked me something about
every single thing is sticky.
Well, he asked me something about menstruation. So we do have a daughter, but she's 22, and so she's out of the house already. And he asked me something, and then he made me think, the question that he asked me, and I thought for the first time, and I have two boys, and I said, so, with girls, it's easy to know when they're ready to make babies. They begin to menstruate. But I never thought about how do boys know when they're ready to make babies. I think that was actually his question. And I sort of said, well, I actually never thought about it. I don't know. And then I said to them, I said, well, I don't know. I'll ask Dad. And my husband came down the stairs, and I said, how does a girl knows? I mean, when you begin menstruating, but how does a boy know when he begins, And all the males in my family just went completely silent. And they were 100% embarrassed. And I couldn't understand why. But my dad wasn't embarrassed. He said, well, you typically get an experience mostly at night while you're sleeping. And then he told us about how he was taught as a young boy that touching oneself causes blindness. And now I have no idea. Are you there, Dean? Am I on my own? Have you left me? Okay, so I'm just going to continue talking. And our topic for today is masturbation and then also sodomy and the origins of those concepts. Now, everything I mention in this episode is based on an episode of Derek Lambert's Myth Vision, where he has a very interesting conversation with a professional archaeologist whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, and I didn't take notes. So I will be hoping that Dean catches up on that for us at some later stage. Okay, let me just see. I am connected and I am going strong, although I seem to be on my own. But I'm just going to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. So the story is actually way more interesting than we've been taught, especially if you're a Christian. You've been taught that the sin of sodomy is because the two angels of the Lord who went to take Lot out of these very sinful cities were the men of the city attempted to rape them. They wanted to have sex with them. But that interpretation is because we don't have a proper understanding of the very important culture of hospitality. So hello, Dean, you back?
There you are. Sorry, I'm trying to get everything gone. We've been having some issues with my ISP. I mentioned this to you earlier.
You did. Well, I
let me just see. I'm not
own.
getting your audio.
Okay,
give me a sound check, Tasha.
I'm telling the story of Sodom and
Can
Gomorrah.
you hear me?
I can hear you 100%.
Okay, I can't hear you for some reason.
Okay, would you like me to leave
what
and come
have
back?
I done here?
On my side, it says that I'm in the show and everyone can see and hear me.
Audio. Mic
Dean,
is good.
Your green screen also seems to be gone. For those who are watching live, we are having some technical problems.
I'm not sure what the fuck I'm doing here.
Did you just swear? Really? No, please.
Let me see.
Don't. I'm a proper Calvinist girl. Come on, it shocks me to my core.
Yeah,
okay.
I can't hear Tasha. That's the problem.
That's the problem. Would
Let's
you
just
like me
see.
to? Would you like to pause and let me go out and come back again?
Am I an idiot or something? Sorry, I asked that question before I thought about it.
Your green, do you know your green screen is
I can't hear you, my dear.
gone?
There's some issue here. Let me see.
Okay, I'm going to go into the chat. I'm just going to say,
Let me see.
hmm.
Okay, I don't know what's going on. Apparently, we should just let you continue because I cannot hear a single thing that you're saying. So I don't know. I fucked up
Okay,
my
so
settings
I'm
somehow.
going to pretend I'm just going to lecture and I'm just going to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah.
I have no
And
idea
if
what
you
you're
could just,
saying.
I'll put it in the chat. Please paste the link. Please paste
Let
the
me see.
link to
Site is
the
using your camera. Just double check this.
show. And so
Oh, what I get.
I've just asked Dean to paste the link to the show that this information is based on. It's based on a conversation on the Myth Vision podcast between Derek Lambert. Hello, Bolilan.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Kialibocha, I'm going to just take myself down and let you guys
No,
continue.
Dean, can you hear me?
He can't hear us. I don't know what he did.
Yeah, but now I was here to check, and now he leaves me as a co-presenter, and I don't know anything about masturbation.
And of course, you are speaking the truth
I'm not
and nothing but the
experienced.
truth. The truth
Yeah,
and nothing but the truth.
they say about 90, is it 96 or 97% of the males have done it.
Only.
Yeah, and there's a 3% that are really deluded when it comes to fearing hair on the hands, but mostly do, but very few agree.
Okay,
Most
well,
are in denial.
so I will tell you that masturbation is a touchy topic, pardon the pun, but especially in Christianity. And the irony is, it's just one of the misconceptions about sexuality and sex in the Bible. You know, people of the Bible, if you read the rest of the Bible, if we think about Abraham, who didn't hesitate to marry his half sister. He didn't hesitate to Jacob, who had 2 wives and 2 concubines, and the loose way, what is called the easy way, in which people in biblical times went about sex and sexuality, is actually an indication that the issues that we have, I think, stem from maybe our Victorian, the Victorian influence, the influence of the Victorians. I don't know whether I'm wrong or right about that, but what I do know is that the sin that Onan committed, it wasn't the fact that he masturbated. And to me, that is the key to this whole story. So do you know what the real sin was that Onan committed, Polilang?
I think it was withdrawal method.
Yes, but why? It's not the fact that he practiced a contraceptive method either. That wasn't the sin.
But it's because he never wanted to make a child for the brother.
That's it. He didn't want to enable the widow of his brother to have a child, because that would affect his inheritance, and that would affect his financial position. So he was actually abusing Tamar, because his responsibility as the brother as the brother-in-law was to see that his brother's progeny could go forward, and that had to be done through his sister-in-law. And he was basically abusing Tamar sexually, because he took the benefit.
No, when he was taken there, it was against his will. So he is the victim. The other one is the one that is oppressing, or the culture is oppressing him. So when is he abusing now?
I think he enjoyed it. I think he enjoyed it, but he didn't want to take the responsibility. There's no ways that he was forced to have the sex with
the
her.
Bible doesn't tell us that he enjoyed it or not.
Yes, but well, he was willing to die for it.
Sometimes with culture, if you are required to do things, you just pretend that you play along, and in the process you don't do it 100% because you know that it's nonsense.
Well, he
was
able
in that position.
Okay, Bonina, the fact that he was able to get it up, doesn't that indicate some sort of enjoyment?
He's made.
Exactly my point. Exactly my point. And I'm not trying to be feminist or anything here, but okay, can you and I agree to let that one go? The fact of the matter is he wasn't fulfilling his duty within the cultural parameters. His duty was to ensure that his brother's widow begot a child, preferably a son, and he didn't want to do that, and that is why he was punished.
But here's the interesting thing. Then in religion, you can look at any verse and make it fit any doctrine that you have come along with. Let's say it was an African religion, because in African culture, we are supposed to do that. It even has a name. It's called Hukenela.
I was not aware of that.
Yes, it is. But the new generation don't want anything to do with it.
Okay, and now which I get. I mean, to take that responsibility upon yourself, and to beget a child just for the sake of begetting a child. It's not your brother's child. I mean, even if you do it on his behalf, it's still today.
Yeah, it still becomes his child, but through you.
Yeah, and today we understand that's in name only. I mean, if one can put it like that. But the fact of the matter is,
even if he's barren, that's how somebody helps him, so that he should not be ashamed.
That is very interesting. But
usually they help him without his knowledge.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
it brings tension to the family. They can see that they are fighting on this issue. Then they go and help, but they don't tell him.
That is very interesting. I wasn't aware of that. We don't
And
have
the
that.
child that comes, it's still his.
It's still his. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But I just feel sorry for all the millions of men over the many, many hundreds of years who believed that masturbation was a sin, when in fact it wasn't masturbation. Many boys, especially, I mean, that who believed that it was a sin and who have issues that they didn't need to have, because the actual sin was not the masturbation. It was not following the rules of the society and getting the wife pregnant. But I want to move on to the whole business of
But
sodomy and
before we
Gomorrah.
move there, the question
Yeah.
is how do we feel guilty and need Jesus if the church doesn't go around trying to find as many sins as possible? And this
Well,
one, it covers 97% of the male population. So
yep.
when you say we are sinners because we went, say, wow, I'm a sinner too. I need Jesus.
Because guilt is a very powerful method of coercion, to make somebody feel guilty. I mean, we all use it. If you have kids, if you tell a child, you've made mommy and please clean up your room, you make my heart very sore if you don't clean up your room. I mean, that's guilt. It's a very, very, sorry?
Manipulation 101.
Absolutely. It's brilliant. I mean, it's the oldest, it's the, and I'm not, as we have to sometimes use it, but then we have to use it as, and acknowledge that we use it, and not, and use it for good reason. I mean, what religion wants to do is control people for their own sake. When I want my child to clean up their room, it's because it's good for them and it's good for me. But let's move on to Sodom
and you are honest that you are feeling bad about it.
Yes.
But don't stretch it to say, you know, you'll give me a heart attack one day, and I wonder what you'll do when I'm dead.
Absolutely. Don't take it too far. And I like that you, if you're honest about how you feel, then I don't think it's manipulation. But in the case of religion, I'm saying that God is telling me that God is feeling pained by something. So it's not, it's that once removed issue that makes it even more complicated. And you have this God that can watch you even when you're private. He can see through the roof, he can see through the ceiling. So you have no privacy. And that's just sick, you know.
I plan to buy dark curtains and to stick things on my keyholes.
It won't help. God can see right through them. He can see through the walls. He's got X-ray eyes. He's like a mom.
Bravo.
So now, what I learned in this Myth Vision podcast that Derek Lambert did with the archaeologist, the archaeologist whose name, for the love of me, I can't remember. He wrote a book, The Cities That Built the Bible, which I think is a brilliant title for a book. And apparently in the area of where Sodom and Gomorrah is, there are, through volcanic and geographical actions, there's bitumen quite close to the surface. And this is a geological phenomenon, and people of the olden days didn't know what it was. There's a very distinct smell of sulfur. So the story about the destruction is absolutely linked to what happened in reality, because this is a geologically unstable area, and there was bitumen, and there was tarmac, and there really was fire and brimstone.
There was a freeway connecting Sodom and Gomorrah.
Possibly.
So it melted. Oh, can you believe Dean, when he removes that pisang thing, then the sound comes back?
Watch it. Oh,
I'm telling you, I must be like some kind of technological T-Rex or something. I just had to like change the volume on one of these apps. It's crazy.
I just wanted to say something else about the fact that Sodom and Gomorrah can be archaeologically proven that they were probably real places.
Yeah.
Like Sodom and Gomorrah. So Christians will often say that we found Sodom and Gomorrah. That is proof that the Bible is correct and that the Bible is inerrant and that the Bible is true. And it doesn't work that way, you know. The fact that there was a real great trek. There was a real event in South African history where a bunch of farmers from the Western Cape decided they were fed up with English rule, and they took their wagons and families and they trekked up north. That's a real historical event. But then you have a series of books by the Afrikaner writer F.R. Venter. It's actually, there's 4 books or 5 maybe in the series about a fictional family and what happens to them on this trek. And many of the events described in the books are based on actual historical events. There was the massacre at Blouberg. There was the massacre of Dingaan. There was the massacre of Piet Retief. But the fact that you build a story around that doesn't make the story that you're building true.
Yeah.
And
In fact, a story becomes more convincing and absorbing if the reader links it to something that really happened.
That really happened. I mean,
so that was good writing on the part of the Bible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kudos. You should not be jealous.
But by that logic, Spider-Man exists because it was written in New York, and New York is there, and you can pick any bit of fiction that's got some form of history to it, and it's all true for that matter.
I'm sure one could go. I'm sure.
But Spider-Man, you cannot deny Spider-Man.
I didn't hear
I've
that.
seen him dancing in parties.
Yeah, he's a bit of a viral sensation here in South Africa.
He's real.
So that's the first thing I want to put on the table. I say, Dean.
But wait a minute! Didn't they how many times have they found the brimstone and sulfur of Sodom and Gomorrah already? It's not the first time that they found it. They found that place many times.
It's not a new discovery. It hasn't been found many times. It's just been known about for many years. But you see, ignorance.
It must be on the news. They want to keep it fresh.
Yeah.
And if people forget quickly enough, then anything seems fresh. And if you're desperate for evidence, then you can make anything sound like evidence. But what I found interesting about the story about Sodom and Gomorrah, so maybe some background. So what happens is that it's a very interesting part of history of the Bible. And I just want to put it out there. Guys, I love the Bible. The Bible is the most amazing book. And I see the Bible as an essential part of Western culture. It is so ingrained. You know, as I said, I have a little school. And if you look at idioms in Afrikaans, so I don't know how many people still use idiomatic language, but in Afrikaans, I just did in this week, in fact, on Thursday and Friday, I had my kids do an exercise about idiomatic expressions. And as we went through them, out of the 20, at least 7 of them were directly related to biblical expressions.
Yeah, I don't know what the English equivalent is, but we know of Job se geduld, and which is the patience of Job.
Die kalf is in die put. So the calf is in the well. It's the small jackals, that's the baby jackals that ruin the vines, the baba jakkalsies wat die wingerde, die klein jakkalsies wat die wingerde vernietig. I mean, you can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
I'd venture to say that 50% of all idiomatic expressions in Afrikaans and English have their origin in the Bible. And
it tells you that it's a new culture. because when it was formulated, that language, then the Bible was already popular.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Certain languages were formed before. So you'll see less of that.
Yes, absolutely, I agree. But the point is, in modern Western culture, I mean, the Bible is 2,000 plus years old, some certain parts of it at least. So it has had such a fly in the ointment. Exactly. Thank you very much, Ecclesiastes, to Facebook user in the comments. So much of Western culture is rooted in some way in the Bible. And that's why I'm a proponent that everybody should learn the Bible and learn the language of the Bible and learn the expressions of the Bible, because it's so precious. It's as precious to me as the works of Herodotus or the Odyssey by Homer. We need to put it on that level. The problem that I have with the
not
Bible,
everybody, only intelligent people like you.
Who says I'm
Others
intelligent?
are going to take it literally, and then we'll still have this problem we are having.
I think.
Why do you atheists hate the Bible like this? You know, all you do is you just talk about the Bible. The Bible is wrong here. The Bible contradicts itself there. I mean, like, why are you atheists so obsessed with the Bible?
You know, in this Myth Vision YouTube video, I just want to say, anybody who enjoyed Game of Thrones, if there was a person who had the guts to make a mini-series based on the Bible, from Genesis to Ecclesiastes, the only problem is it would be X-rated. It would definitely be R-rated.
Definitely be X-rated, yeah.
And the next step would be X-rating it, because there's so much violence and there's so much misogyny and
porn.
Absolutely, it's a terrible book, but at the same time, you know, it's as interesting. It tells us so much about human nature and about our history and about ourselves. But I want to just say that the story about Sodom and Gomorrah comes from Abraham. So Abraham was called by God, and then he trekked to the new land that God promised him. By the way, Abraham was married to his half sister, not his cousin, not his half sister. They had the same father but different mothers. So incest, you go, guy. And then with Abraham, and this is so odd because God called Abraham, the Bible tells us, but then his nephew Lot treks with him. So did Abraham tell Lot, hey, guy, I've been called by God to move into this new land of milk and honey, so come with me, let's do this together? Okay, never mind that. Then what happens is that their herders start to have some discontentment because there's too many animals and there's not enough water. And then the way that Abraham settles this fight between the herders is that he takes his lot and they go into the desert, and Lot takes the best part of the land, and he ends up close to Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, what we have to remember is that these were nomadic peoples. The concept of cities was fairly new, and I can imagine, and that's what archaeologists tell us, that there was still in certain places some conflict between the settled people in the cities and the nomadic peoples that moved around. And one of the ways to navigate this crossover from nomadic peoples and the people who live in the cities was to have very strict rules about hospitality. And one of the strict rules about hospitality was that you had to treat any foreigner, and foreigners are not people from another country. It's anybody who does not live in the city, because if typically the populations of the city would be between, if it was 5,000 people living in a city, that would be a massive place. And most of those people knew one another quite well, and the interactions were established. So anybody that came from outside was a foreigner, because they were not of the city.
And also, they never had cars. Just go into another city to take days. So yeah, when you see
Yes.
that person, it's really a foreigner. Comes
And-
from another place on the other side. Comes from what do you call that city? Worcester. Came
Yes,
all the
yes,
way
yes.
to Cape Town, walking. That's a foreigner.
That's a foreign. And also, there's no ultra city. For the person trekking between these cities, there's no ultra city one stop to refresh yourself. Your
Mhm.
refreshment is in the city. And therefore, hospitality can be the difference between life and death. So then in the story, the angel of the Lord. And that's a topic for another day. But Abraham is camped some distance away from Sodom and Gomorrah. And one day he gets this visitor, and there's actually 3 of them. And he slaughters a cow for them and he cooks them a meal. And that's also when it's predicted that Isaac will be born. This is before the birth of Isaac. And then this visitor and his 2 buddies, which is the 3 in 1 or the 1 and 3, and that's what people call the triune God, which is really weird. But in any case, they tell Abraham that Sodom and Gomorrah are wicked cities and they are going to be destroyed. And then they go off, and Abraham bargains with God, or alternately the angel of God.
Oh,
And
the number of people. Hey, I forgot that verse.
you forgot it, huh? Yeah.
But what was the reason for the wickedness? What was the explicit reason given?
No,
Just wickedness.
It's not stated. It's just said that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are wicked. And then Abraham bargains because he knows that his nephew Lot lives there. And then he bargains with God and he says, if I can find 100 good people, will you spare it? And God says yes. And then he can't find 100. And then he goes, if I can find 5 good people in that city, will you spare it? And God says, no, there's not even 5 good. So I just wonder, how did Abram go about finding these good people? Did he use a questionnaire? Was it sort of just think about the logic of the story. That's what's
No,
so interesting.
it's not actually Abraham who even recorded that. It's somebody who wrote this book of Genesis later.
Obviously. But
Exactly.
whoever wrote it later, the internal inconsistencies, if you pack the story out, I mean, if I were to write a story like that today, it would be like, there's so many gaps in the plot, because you can't, it's typical mythological writing, because in myths, you don't have to fill in the plot holes. The plot holes are just irrelevant because the story is not about a logical plot. It's about bringing some message across. And
But
what that
you see, a myth is like a Swiss cheese. If it doesn't have holes, it's not authentic.
Absolutely. And
there must be big holes throughout the myth.
Yes. Because myths allow, guys, listen, you're speaking to somebody who has a love of literature. It was my major at university. In fact, I have an honors degree in English literature. I love myths. The holes, one needs the holes so that you can fill in the holes and explore and write 5-page essays about it. Because if there's not enough room,
the holes in the story. Okay.
Yes, you need the holes, because
I
that's
thought you
where
were
the
talking about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes, we are. That's also holy.
Lots of holes went into that story.
Potholes.
It's a holy story, this one.
Those two.
But in any case, so then God decides, okay, there's nobody in Sodom and Gomorrah who is worthy to be saved, and the 2 cities will be destroyed. And then he sends his 2 angels, or the 2 men of God. It might have been Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, or maybe God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit stayed behind. How will we ever know? But in any case, these 2 angels, and they're called strangers, angels, sort of varying things, they arrive in Sodom and Gomorrah. And the sin that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah commits is that they are not hospitable to these people.
Oh, yes.
They treat them badly. And that's the actual sin. The sin of maybe they wanted to have some fun and games on the side on the way to get Lot and his daughters and his wife out. You know, who knows?
I mean, all that flying, it must be terribly lonely.
Absolutely, it's a long journey. And then the rest of so in the story, what is so interesting, and if one looks at the parallels, you know, there's another incident in the Bible. I think it's in Jeshua, or in King David or somebody is pursued by enemies, and then he hides, and he's in a house, and his enemies circle the house, and then they are struck with blindness, and they can't find the door. They can't find the doorway. Now, the same thing happens to the men of Sodom and Gomorrah, who want to, apparently, it just says they want to abuse, and it's assumed that they want to have sex with these two angelic men, which one can imagine, because they must have been beautiful, they must have been gorgeous. So, I mean, who can blame them? And they are struck with blindness. But that's only after Lot offers his 2 virgin daughters to the men outside.
Right.
Obviously, they had a preference for male flesh and not female flesh, because I mean, female flesh comes with responsibility. If one of them falls pregnant, then then you stuck with it. So yeah. And then the so I always wonder if these men who were struck blind, did their sight return before the destruction came about, or were they just now sort of blind? Or I wonder about these things, about the little details, because the devil is in the details.
I don't remember whether it was temporary or was it longer than Saul's.
Longer than?
Saul's blindness. You remember Paul?
Oh, well, we're not told. We're not told.
Well, he was not, he was blind also, but he needed a man to remove those scales.
Yes.
We don't know there whether they were removed or not.
We don't
because
know.
Also, it would be interesting when sulfur comes down and you don't see it, you just feel it all over the place. And it would make somebody sadistic to enjoy it.
Just to get back to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, apparently there are also rock formations that look like petrified people. And let's think about the ancient Greek myths that are, by the way, older than, or as old as some of the stories we told in the Bible. The idea of petrifying people is not an idea unique to the Bible or to Jewish mythology. I mean, that is what Medusa,
I was going to say, the stare of looking upon Medusa's gaze apparently turns men to stone as well.
Exactly. So the idea, and I mean, you just have to drive out to Citrus Dal and look at the rock formations in the Cedarburg to just, they are fascinating. You can see that people, beautiful area. I mean, but the thing is, if you have a very limited, just a little bit of understanding and a little bit of imagination, you can absolutely see how this region, where you have bitumen bubbling up out of the soil, you have, accompanying the bitumen, you have the smell of sulfur, you have unstable geological formations, you have rock formations that look like petrified people. It's just a story ripe for the pickings. And one can also see archaeologically why people would want to settle there. It's a very convenient place to settle in many ways, because you have fire close by, you have all the uses of bitumen and tar to make things waterproof. And then if you don't have any knowledge of geography or geology, the threat of some major geological disturbance would be beyond you. And what do you ascribe a major geological upheaval to? It must be the gods.
Mm-hmm.
and you build this whole story. And if one looks at it like that, then the story becomes so much more interesting because it explains so much.
Jane is trying to do the rapture. He's going up. Circle
Sorry, I'm
down.
trying to put the link in the description here so we
I
can.
thought you're going up. I thought you were leaving us just now.
I'm running this whole stream off my phone, and that they give me a break, cut me a break.
But I want to begin to close my little session and say that as non-believers and as atheists, I think we need to be positive about educating our fellow humans who are believers about the origins of these stories and how fascinating it really is, because most people don't even know the real story of Sodom and Gomorrah. What people are fed in church is very superficial, very shallow messages that preachers put together to get people hooked. And I think the best way to get more people to see our point and to be able to communicate with us is to make them see the Bible through a different lens. And that, I think, is what we need to do. I've had discussions.
When you say that, there's another obstacle because it has been presented as a book that should be read by somebody who has gone to a university, who has a degree in theology, and people are told that they are sheep and they need a shepherd. The shepherd is going to show them the way. So you come with the mythological part of it, you come with the cultural part of it, of how enjoyable it is to read. They don't see that.
But
I must say, I did enjoy reading it. I read it a number of times, and it was during the time that I still had those rose-colored glasses of Jesus.
No, Bolly Lang. They are blood colored. They are not rose colored. They are blood colored.
So, but during the time that I read, I never find it being a very heavy experience, except Revelation. No Revelation.
Did you love Revelation?
No, you don't understand what is happening. It can feel a little bit mad or what.
It's an acid trip.
Read the book and read it in details. It doesn't make sense. You don't know what. You'll never know what is happening there.
But you know, it's almost like there is this. There's a Bible story archetype or a template that all the writers used. You know, there's this built-in sense of retribution. First of all, that's a very, very strong theme that keeps on recurring in all these. You know, somebody is wronged, and then there's retribution. Somebody is pure of being, and they seem to either A, suffer, or B, then get rewarded, or just B, get rewarded. It's very strange how these themes just keep on recurring, and
I think it's
almost like they're trying to.
The culture.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to tell you something without saying it exactly. You know?
No, but if you have any rudimentary knowledge of myth and mythology and how myths are similar, then you will see the parallels. It's the similar lines. It was Joseph Campbell, who in the 1920s did a study on the journey of the hero's journey. I mean, it's Star Wars. It's
yeah. But it's like it's for me it's the structure, you know, like the never mind the content, the actual structure is so repetitive.
Absolutely,
it just repeats and repeats itself.
Yes, because that's
I read that even African stories, even though there was no university where people went to tell them, there's the same structure that you find in it. So these things, they're built into culture.
Absolutely.
Because,
and you know, somebody like me, I've always been a ferocious reader, and we had a series of encyclopedias that my mom bought when she was at university. They were printed in 1969, and they have, it's 8 books, and each book has 8 countries, and then it has the history of the country and then folk tales of that country. And even as a 10-year-old, I could see the parallels between the Pearl Girl, the story that was called the Pearl Girl, and Cinderella. Now, the Pearl Girl is a story from Vietnam, but the plot line is exactly the same. And so there were stories from every part of the world that had the same lines that flowed through each of them. And even as a 10 or 11-year-old, I could see, but this is just another version of the Cinderella story or of Jack and the Beanstalk. And it's exactly the same structure. And we need to make Christians aware of the structure of their own book. Most Christians who deconstruct that will tell you, and I've listened and watched hours of YouTube conversations with Christians, former Christians who are now atheists, and the vast majority of them will say it was reading the Bible that put them on the path to deconstructing. And
yeah, no, it is because once you connect the whole thing, then that's where those holes start appearing.
Yeah, and we as non-believers, we don't have to criticize the Bible. We just have to know a number of texts of the Bible, and preferably not take it out of context. We need to give the context, because the context strengthens the case we're trying to make. It doesn't weaken the case we're trying to make.
Not at all. In fact, it's the ones that are denying that are going to take it out of context.
Yep. Yes, and that's what we need to do, and we need to have more Christians educated about the text, because now my educator hat comes on very firmly. When you and I grew up and went to church, we were read from the Bible. A major part of a sermon was reading from the Bible. In the past 10 or 15 years, that has changed. Preachers, pastors, they don't read a long text from the Bible anymore. They pick a nice sounding verse and they bombard the congregation with that little verse. Jesus is love. These 3, love and hope and what. And
sometimes it's not the whole verse.
It's just not even the whole verse. Never mind. And most people find reading extremely hard work. They find it to be hard work. And I must say, reading the Bible is not always nice. I mean, it's a slog. It really is a
boring.
slog. It's boring. It's boring. So
and A begat B, and B begat C, and C begat D, and for fucking ever.
Now, don't read King James Version. Try another version that is written better than Shakespeare.
Even the newer versions, even the less formal versions, you know, the bits that are nice and easy to read are the very few and far between. We have to educate Christians about their own holy text. And I would venture to say that the same goes for Muslims. We have to educate Muslims about their own holy text. Because if we can do that, and we can at least get them to begin to think about what their holy text says, then
when you come to getting people to have an open discussion, Christians, at least you can have some discussion. The majority of them, Muslim, they want to drive you to a point where there's a fight. even in their style of talking, because they want to end the discussion and win. So
That's a
it's a
different
mission.
kettle of
I
fish.
hear what you want us to say, to do, but it's quite an assignment.
Well, just tell the lovely story of
Well,
Sodom and
we have to start
Onan.
atheist Bible study. I'm convinced that we have to do it. Like maybe once a month we pick a chapter and we just dive in and we do atheist Bible study.
So let's see if we
I'm
can.
completely up for that.
We can call it storytelling. Stories from what ancient books.
Yeah.
Story time. Story time.
Oh my goodness. I want to come up with a very offensive title
No,
about
Dean,
goats.
come on. Be nice. Play nice.
Something
Oh,
about
goodness.
goat herding or camel farming or something.
You like to obey them.
No. Be nice.
Yeah. Oh my
Gentlemen,
goodness.
we're running into an hour. I'm hungry. I've got fekuk and milk waiting for me. The Springboks gave the poor Romanians a really bad beating, and I have to go
I didn't even know they played.
Well, I have to say that my religion is I'm a devotee to the god Ragabush, and
Okay.
the oval ball and the two uprights, I bow to them, and I'm sacrificing to be here with you while there's rugby on the TV. I am a devoted follower of the god Ragabush. Many years ago, Casper de Vries did a skit on Ragabush and where rugby comes from. And since my family have all deconverted, we only have one god now, and it's called rugby. So
okay. If I'm watching with other people, yes, I do. But without any other person,
no, well, it is a family affair. I mean, my mom, my dad, my husband, my sons. So it is a little bit of thing of if you can't beat them, join them. But
it's a bonding session. I understand.
I've had to do that since I was about 3 hours old. So that's my life. But
I
it's
usually
an honor.
go for meat and beer.
Huh? What did you say?
I go for meat and beer.
I just go for wine.
Then I pretend that I'm watching sport with them. And it's easy. You don't have to watch it. When I say, you just,
When everybody cheers, you just join in. Guys, thank you so much for showing up, Tasha. Sorry, you were saying?
I'll have to educate you on my religion.
Yeah.
Not
as
come
long as
knock at my door.
Yeah, don't come knocking and don't come begging, don't come asking for tithes. Then we'll be good.
Now I'll bring boerewors. I'll bring boerewors and beer.
That's a good bribe.
This is very interesting.
You gave us interesting information.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it
really.
really.
Tunguska, yes, I'm familiar with the Tunguska event. Yes, I'm familiar with it. The incident, it's possible, although I think there's enough evidence that there's also geological things at work. But please go and check it out. Do your own research. Go and watch the Myth Vision podcast. Derek Lambert, we are plugging your show. Please, maybe someday you can plug ours. How's that?
Amazing. So, thank you very much for stepping in, guys. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. The devil is playing with my internet. I have no clue. Apparently, I get an SMS every now and then that says they're changing some battery on some thing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, just get the fucking internet going. I don't care if you need to plug it into.
Everything will be all right in the end, and if it isn't all right,
I mean, just go plug it into an angel's ass or something. Just make it work. That's all I'm saying.
Just Gomorrhize it.
Oh well, thank you very much, guys. Let's let me see if I can actually find this on the phone. Where's the intros?
Bye-bye. Love you all.
Thank you so much for stepping up, and Tate Rakipile, Rialeboga. Baie dankie, Tersha.
Totsiens.
Bye.
We'll see you guys next weekend.
Springbokke. Dankie, Dean.